Welcome aboard! Hey, this is Rob Brown.
And this is Patrick Fortier Brown.
And we are the Business of Boating podcast, but we're going to call it the Boatcast. And Pat, what's this Boatcast going to be about?
Well, we're trying to give you guys a behind-the-scenes look of the boating industry from both a business and a recreational view. We're going to be bringing in some people from the community and maybe some other dealerships as well and professionals in certain industries. We'll debate some hot topics and share with you the secrets of what makes a great marina function. Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks in advance for turning on this podcast today. If you want to find us in the future, look for us on SoundCloud. I believe the name of the podcast is The Business of Boating with Rob and Pat. If you want to find out more information about the business, you can look for us on Facebook, Clark Marine, or Instagram. In addition, you can see us online at clarkmarinemaine.com, or if you want to get all the fun information we have to put out to you guys, it's rob@clarkmarine.com. That's where all the vlogs and videos are. Enjoy!
Hey, this is Rob Brown with Clark Marine's Boatcast, and I'm here today with a few people. First of all, Pat.
What's up?
Good morning, bro. We're sitting around the table here today, and we've got a few of them millennial people, that everybody wants to dish on. I just don't see it. That's not really my experience. I have a very different outlook on the young people that are entering the workforce, and I think this is going to be a great listen for you folks out there. We just got back from Orlando, Florida, at the MDC, which is the Marine Dealer Expo and Conference, and of course one of the big topics down there was millennials entering the workforce. What's your take, Pat?
Well, to be honest, I only know my own experience in the workforce. Today we're joined by a couple colleagues at the marina. We have Morgan and we have Dakota.
Hi, Pat. I'm Morgan. I've started working here in November and have really enjoyed my time at Clark Marine so far, getting to know these guys for sure.
Hey there, I'm Dakota. I started working here September of last year, and tomorrow is my last day.
That really gives us an opportunity for, some very different takes here. I know that just to give you a quick brief of what I know, I'm the old guy in the group. I graduated high school in 1978. There was a life back then. I never really had any further educational experience other than a high school degree, and it was a little different back then. Today we're sitting with my son Pat, who has received a degree and has been out in the workforce and has chose to join, I guess, what you'd consider a small family business, as you may see it. Morgan, who had come to us, as she mentioned, in November to fill in some gaps with us, has just recently graduated from the University of Maine and is now really looking at, the adult job entering the workforce. And Dakota, who's worked her way through school and in her way, and has just finished and is now taking a job very soon, first of the year, in the field that she's been studying in. And I think that should give us, it should be a really interesting conversation here today. There's some very different takes in the workforce, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of excited to hear what you guys have to say.
Thanks for the introduction, Rob. I'd say that we're pretty excited as well. I can only speak for myself, but I can imagine they're excited too. I'll give you a quick little background on myself. I graduated in 2010 from high school, which is just, a couple of years after you did. And then I got a college degree and worked in the workforce for a few years. I did some technical work, and I did some work within my career path, which is in psychology. And now I'm back working with the family. I can't say that I'm disappointed. I've loved it so far, and it was the right fit for me. Morgan, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hey, thanks for having me in today, guys. Yeah, let me give you a little backstory on myself. I graduated high school in 2013 from Messalonskee, and then I traveled up just an hour north to the University of Maine, and I've just in December received my degree in civil engineering. I'm still on my way trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up, so I think that I will have an interesting take on this for you guys.
Thanks, Morgan. I'm really excited to hear your input going forward.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Morgan. I'm just really curious. I know you're a really smart young lady, and I'm really curious to see what you do end up doing. And we're going to make a play. We're going to do everything we can to keep you on board, because there's nothing about smart people that I don't like having around. And I know we can put your engineering degree to work around here. So
That is only after all, if they don't try to get rid of our paper.
What? Are you saying we have to get rid of paper? Is that a prerequisite of continuing on with business?
Well, we can save that till later. Let's get back to the topic. Dakota, tell us a little bit more about your experience.
Oh, sure. So mine's a little weird. I graduated in 2014 from Messalonski, same as Morgan.
Hey.
Go Eagles. And I went to a college in Massachusetts for a year. Didn't like what I was studying. I actually went into AmeriCorps in Chicago for a year. Really enjoyed that. Came back, somehow applied to a job boat cleaning. Was brought inside for within the first few days to do some office work, and never quite went back outside. So been here ever since, and now I am leaving to work with FEMA, which is what I study in school. Not quite got my degree yet. Working my way through, paying my own way and stuff online. So I think I bring a good perspective. It's a little different.
I think it's important to note, too, that Dakota's the one that got me involved with this crazy business.
I'm sorry.
Gee, thanks, Dakota. Well, now that we have the introductions taken care of, we can actually get into the meat of our podcast. Back to Rob.
Hey, Dakota, it's really been a pleasure to have you work with us as long. We brought you inside after we had originally hired you. My wife, who runs the office, really identified quickly in interviewing you that you were maybe a level above a boat washer. You definitely, your education, your knowledge and whatnot, we certainly found a better place, put you right to work, and you worked in the office, and you've done really a superior job. Have absolutely no question that you're going to be very successful in anything that you do. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, I guess, what have been some of your thought process? You're going from Maine and you're moving to Mississippi. There's got to be a little bit of apprehension there or anxiety. Maybe talk to us a little bit about that. You're a very confident gal, and I know you're going to do well, but there's still something more to it. There had to be something that brought you to your decision.
First of all, Rob, thank you for, the compliments. I've had just a really great time working. I feel really lucky to sort of have fallen into Clark Marine and kind of become part of this little family we got going here. But as far as that goes, like I said, I had done the AmeriCorps thing in Chicago, so I've already dropped everything. And, before I had my little yellow buggy, so I packed up all my life and drove to Chicago, by myself for the first time, kind of. Never been to Chicago. Worked right in the city and had a pretty crazy fun time. So Mississippi doesn't feel like so far off and so crazy as it might seem to someone else. And I love change. I thrive on change and changing environments. And this is actually the longest I've ever done something was this job. So I got to move on. So it's not so much apprehensive as I'm really excited to be able to prove myself in the field I want to go into and prove myself as like a leader as I'm going into a leadership role and really see where that takes me from here. So, but I couldn't have done it without you guys. Everything kind of worked out exactly how I think it should have in that aspect. So
there's no doubt about, I think, your leadership qualities. There's so many days that I come in and I just kind of am able to go up to your desk and say, okay, Dakota, what have I got on my agenda and what have you got for me to do today? So, and you've always been able to fill those gaps in pretty well. So, hey, Morgan, why don't you talk to us a little bit about your thought process right now? You've just recently graduated, as you talked about. You have a degree in what is really an interesting field, I think, in civil engineering. And if you could describe your ideal job, I guess what you would really like to do and what you'd like to accomplish, and let's keep it in that, say, next 3 to 5 years. Where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so for maybe a little bit of background on civil engineering that people might not know or know more specifically what I do, I focus more on the hydrology side of civil engineering. I've done a lot of information on roadway design, some other sort of engineering challenges like that. So in terms of what kind of job I'm looking for me, I'm really a lot different from Dakota. She's done this amazing thing where she can get up and go somewhere completely new. My whole family's in Maine, and I love it here, and I see myself being here at least for a couple more years. Something that I'm looking for in a job is definitely a lot of problem solving. I find that that's something I'm strong at and really enjoy. And a close-knit family that you can work together with, maybe fight a little bit, but at the end of the day, you still like each other.
Wow, that's really interesting. We really do have a couple of different perspectives there. I'd say mine was slightly different than theirs. I went out I went running for cash and found out that that's not what I wanted to do. And now I'm back working with the family, and I couldn't be happier. So it looks like there's a lot of differences in what you guys are looking for in your career, but I feel like there's a lot of similarities too. Let's talk a little bit more about that family environment, feeling welcome. I feel like it can be tough for millennials coming into the workforce nowadays, where there's expectations not taught to us in school. We learn about how to do the job, but we don't exactly learn how to deal with our colleagues. I feel as though when we're in the workplace now, we more or less gravitate towards the younger people. We kind of have a little cohort here at Clark Marine, primarily the three of us here, then a couple more, I'd say, that are basically inseparable because, we're from the same generation and we know how to communicate with each other. How would you say communication is, really wherever you found employment since you've graduated? Do you like having other millennials around? Do you like being included in an environment with a lot of different age groups? What are your thoughts?
I find that definitely millennials tend to stick together when you first come in. Maybe that's just because we're maybe new at the job. But it's definitely important to have people of all ages, all generations working together, especially in engineering. You can't even get a professional engineering license until you've studied under an engineer for 4 years. And that has to be somebody who already has a professional engineering license, who knows a lot more and who can teach you the stuff you need to know to become a professional engineer.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess my most relevant experience towards that is when I was working in an AmeriCorps team. It was mostly millennials, but there were some older people, even some people with kids. Some people had a lot different experiences than I did, veterans even I worked with in my team. So, but I think the most important thing was that our central goal really kept us together and kept us heading in the right direction and made us work together. So whatever our differences were, and however differently we approached a task, we always made sure to get it done so that, everyone in the team benefited from ourselves. So.
That's a really exceptional point, Dakota, is that when you have a team, and say it's multi-generational, and in most teams and most workforce areas now, that is, we have a wide range of ages of folks put here, and each one of them seem to have personality traits that are in line with their age. And you're right, what binds us together or really unifies us is that common goal. And I think bringing that up, it's really good to hear that come from you, that you're goal-driven, which I kind of is obvious thing anyway. But in order for a team to be truly a unified team, no matter what the ages are, you really have to be unified behind the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing is, kind of you touched on it, where people lack, people fill in. So, maybe some of the older people in our team weren't the greatest with the spreadsheets, weren't the greatest with sort of reaching out, cold calling the community. And maybe we weren't as good in some other areas. Maybe we weren't as good with connecting and staying in a community as the older generations were for whatever reason. So I think the goal is so important because as long as you get there, you sort of fill in the cracks along the way with whatever, generations are good at, if you want to separate it like that. But I think that's a really important part of it.
I think that's a really good point about filling in the gaps and really respecting each other as a group. I think ultimately having a vision that's shared through the generations is vital to success. So now steering it towards the marine industry, it looks like as we move along, the marine industry is starting to get younger and younger, just like every workforce really. And we're still dominated by a bunch of small mom and pop businesses all over the country. Sure, you have you have a handful of large companies that take up a lot of the marketplace, but really, especially when it's relative to car dealerships or box stores or anything like that. The marine industry really is a mom and pop business. Tell us where the industry is going, Rob. Where is the millennial impact?
I think the smart dealers that are early adopters, and it's kind of foolish to even say you guys aren't kids anymore. I mean, you're really young adults, and to be saying, that your kids coming into the workforce, that's the first thing you got to stop doing. Is these are young adults, and these are the people that are going to carry your business over maybe for the next 30 or 40 years. This hopefully they choose the marine industry as a career path. It has to be a mutual respect. It has to be a respect with, you have a certain amount of people in the workforce that are aged, that have a great deal of experience, that have seen the ups and downs, and hey, we just lived through, and it's really recent history where we had the crash and burn of the entire world economy back in, starting in 08, 09, 10, and 11. Those were very tough years. I think the companies that were able to stitch their groups together and were able to get all generations inside their companies to pull for that common goal and to work off of each other's strengths. And you kind of mingled those together where it wasn't just, the older group saying, those young people coming in, they know everything, they act like they know everything. And the young people coming in saying, those guys are just out of date. They're out of touch with everything. If you're able to get them, your entire staff to work together, that really was a key. And I think we did that very well here. And we're going to have, and eventually you guys are going to be dealing with the same thing. Or you're going to be that bridge to, what is the next one? The Gen Y, is it, that's coming in, that are the 12, 15-year-olds? And you're going to sense that as you go up, where the boomers are slowly working out of the workforce. The millennials are definitely the largest group in the population at this point. And you'll, just like the boomers did, over the last 20 or 30 years, they were the largest group in the workforce. They influenced the workforce. You guys are going to get the same thing I, as a boomer, are getting. It's going to be tasked for you to introduce the next generation and to hopefully form their ideas and thoughts into something that's productive that can work with you.
Yeah, and like you said, we're going to have to do it with the generation that comes after us, and this is like cyclical. This happens every single generation. So I think the separation of just how we speak about the generations, there's sort of got to be a balance. Like, even this conversation is a little ironic as we're saying, like, they're just young folks, don't treat them so different, but also this is how they are different. And Rob will tell you, every time you guys come back from some sort of conference, I'll ask, like, okay, how many of your presenters, like, how many of their speeches were based on millennials? Just because I think they fall back on that a lot, and I think the separation isn't always necessary and isn't even always positive or helpful to the conversation in that way.
Yeah, I definitely think working in collaboration with different age groups is super important, because really the funny thing about the boating industry right now is that as we go along, the age of the buyers is still pretty high. You're still looking at our primary target customer is 55 or older, established, has a retirement account that they can work on, can afford another payment, and yet the workforce is getting younger and younger. How have we adapted to make it so our younger workers can see what these older buyers are really looking for in their boats?
That's a good point, Pat, in bringing up is, yes, predominantly people are usually a little further into their career when they're looking at buying a high ticket or a pleasure item such as a boat. Of course, we just talked about at the conference that a boat generally will be the second largest investment a person makes in their lifetime. Their first investment, of course, the largest generally is a house or maybe a second house. The boat comes in there somewhere. And where I'll go back to maybe my generation as boomers were purchasing stuff, larger ticket items at a little bit earlier in age, simply because we weren't saddled with student loans. And it's definitely something that is a concern in this market, is that smart folks are coming out of school. They are starting their careers. They're generally starting at reasonable entry salary levels, but on the same turn, looking at rent, looking at automobile or transportation costs. Even if you're living in the city, you're paying subway fees or bus fees or whatever it may be. If you're rural, you're paying for an automobile and the transportation costs. Your rent can be anywhere from $700 to $1,200, and now a modest student loan is a boat payment. And even then again, I know a lot of our boat payments range from, say, $300 to $500, depending on what you in our size market. That money is now really in student loan payments. Am I wrong? I know, Dakota, you came a little bit different. You worked your way through. You paid a lot of it, and how you went through. You probably don't have as much debt. I mean, I don't want to get into any specifics, but when we talk to somebody, people bring that up because these aren't 2-year or 3-year loans. They tend to be a little longer than that, aren't they, Morgan?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we all come in, it's a little different for the younger generation, maybe, that we felt the need to go to college and now we have these big loans that we have to take care of. But it definitely will affect our budgets, and it will affect especially the jobs we select. And then in the future, it's going to affect our buying patterns when we get older.
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of crazy to think about that, because when we were hearing the speeches about boats being the second biggest investment in purchase in a buyer's life, that really was focused at the higher generation. Honestly, my second highest investment, my second highest purchase that I'm ever going to have is the 6 years of college I had. I don't think a boat I'll ever buy, if I ever buy a boat, is going to be as expensive as that. I get to play with boats all day. It really does change our buying habits, and with that big investment comes time. Just like anything else, you finance your student loans. It's going to take us about 10 years. The average is about 10 years to get rid of student loans, and then after that, you have that X amount of money that you're spending every month on your student loans. That's just there. You budgeted around that. That's when you can start making your big purchases and everything like that. So it's important to right now really take a look at the vision and find what millennials are going to be looking for, not 2 years down the road, but maybe 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, when they have that extra few $100s per month to spend on something. Now, backtracking a little bit, Rob, how about you tell us about your experience? I know you didn't have quite the investment. A lot of people in your generation didn't have quite the investment into college. You were able to buy pleasure items a little earlier. What was your experience? It was obviously before I was born, well before I was born.
As I would say back in my day, you weren't even a twinkle in your mama's eye. It was different, I graduated in 1978, and when I graduated, you had a much smaller percentage of kids moved on to advanced education. Today, you go to any high school graduation, and a lot of times as they're bringing somebody up on stage to hand them their diploma they've worked 12 or 13 years for here with kindergarten, and they're announcing where they're going on to their next level of education. Pat, that's a good question as far as what the difference was. Yeah, I guess maybe if we settle down a little bit sooner, where we have that extra 4 or 5 years that you spend in school, we in our generation, or somebody who doesn't go to school, had that time to settle down. So maybe they were able to get to a point in their career that they were able to make a major purchase earlier in their career. I know now I guess, realistically, not that we dismiss anybody coming in by any means. We don't judge books by its cover. But predominantly, most of the people investing in high-ticket items that we sell are in their mid to late 30s and older. So it's a pretty good gap between the time you get out of school into when you're able to make that purchase, simply because of the different decisions that are made today than were made 40 years ago. But with all that said, there are a number of ways to get people to the water. There's new boat clubs, there's rentals, there's different things. Pat, what's your take on that? And also, to bring this back around to employment, what are things that people, say my age, as a business owner, can do to make sure that our companies are appealing or relevant to people of your generation, because you're the future of our business. Our success, long-term success, really hinges on entertaining and bringing in really smart people that are dedicated to our own mission. What's your take on that?
I really think the answer to both questions is pretty much the same. One thing that we learned in MDCE was that the customer experience is only as good as the staff experience. I think that bringing millennials into boating is important, not just for those who are working in it, but also those who are going to be buying down the line. And the answer to that is culture. I think culture is really what drives everything. If we have fun here, if we do fun events, if we sponsor fun activities in the community, then not only will we get good people, good young people, we will attract people onto the water. And that's the thing. A lot of people my age don't have the money to put on a boat payment every month. But if they have a few years before they can afford a boat where they can go out, I don't know, once a month, once every couple weeks, maybe go water skiing, maybe lounge around on a boat, maybe, do whatever event is available, they'll get a love for boating, and it'll draw them back in the future. I think that is super important. And I think when it comes to retaining employees with the culture, we're pretty lucky in the fact that we're in a pleasure industry. Boating is fun. So just portraying to everybody in the staff and in addition to everybody in the community that this is great. I get to play on boats every day. That's awesome. What do you guys think?
I just wanted to add that I think millennials or people of our generation are really social people, and I think a lot of times you have events that bring people together. Maybe the concerts on the lake that you guys have is a really good way for people to be able to be social, and younger people our age really enjoy that, and I think that that's a really good way to get people involved with boats more.
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of discovered exactly what Morgan was saying. Working in the boating industry, it's in the summer, it's almost 100% pure fun. Like, you're part of a community that's just like having a great time. And exactly, the concert on the lake, seeing everyone, some boats that maybe like you have seen in the yard, or even like we sold that season, just seeing them out on the concert lake is really awesome. And even seeing some of our customers. And I think that is something that that younger people coming into an industry can really appreciate, is sort of the sense of community and the sense of involvement and a sense of fun that is pretty easy to come by in the boating industry.
That's right on, Dakota. Really, yeah, we are in the business of selling fun. And and you're right, Pat, it is really the responsibility, of maybe the community dealer to make sure that they get out and display how much fun boating is, and accept the fact that, hey, you're going to take people out on the boat can't afford a boat right now, but definitely may in 10 years or so. And I coach football. I'll bring that analogy. And if you want somebody to be really engaged in football in high school and beyond, you really need to start developing that love for it when the kids are at the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade level. And I coached junior football for so long, and I realized that was my purpose, was to get kids to really enjoy the game. And that's what we're doing here in business, is we want to make sure that the people entering the market, hey, they may not be at the top of their game right now or be able to move forward with a major ticket purchase, but that doesn't mean that it isn't our responsibility to get folks to fall in love with the sport and with being on the water and enjoying themselves, and showing that, how it can really bond a family. Because it really is. It tends to be one family boating with another family, or this and that. I always joke about it. I said, when I tell somebody they're buying a fancy boat, I said, if you want to play with your kids, you got to have the best toys. Because it's either your kids are going to go play with the people's, the parents and the kids of the best toy, or if you have the best toy, their kids are going to come to you, and you're going to be able to spend a little more time with your own kids and the neighbor kids.
And I'd say that we already have a pretty good culture, but there's a lot of great things that we could keep doing. I know we do the concert on the lake once a year, but that's just one event. One thing I'm actually going to be working on sometime over the holiday break, luckily now I have some younger people to bounce it off of and some siblings, is we're going to try to make a calendar to get young people out there to make the summer fun for those who don't own boats but are still in the area. Access to boating is huge because they may not be our customers now, but they will be. So we got to make sure they have fun. And while we do that, we got to make sure that the employees there have fun, because that'll keep them around. What kind of events should I start working on, guys?
Pat, I think in addition to, more social events, I think a lot of younger people really enjoy getting out there and getting active, water skiing, wakeboarding, whatever it may be. I think maybe providing an opportunity to do that for people who might not have access to it right now will show them, to how to love boats and how to want to get one in the future.
Those are great ideas. And, for all of the people out there in my generation, the boomers that are listening to this, I guess if there were any one message that I really hope that this boatcast comes across is our industry really is in good hands with people coming in. It's just going to be, I don't think it's so much the actions and activities and thought processes in the younger people's minds. I really think the block is with the older people, the older generation that are really steadfast in, their sacred cows. We've always done it this way. The people, I think, in my position, if they open their minds to these, to the new ideas, the new ways of doing things, and again, make sure that they merge their crews well and they're able to work together, as Dakota brought up, for a common goal. Those are the companies that are going to excel. So, Pat, I guess that's my last take on it. While we're doing this, why don't we spin around the table one more time and everybody kind of just chime in with what they feel, summarize your feelings or what you've had to say today.
It was really enriching to see that different generations really kind of have the same take, and it really ultimately comes down to culture and it comes down to fit. I think that working in unison and kind of respecting our coworkers is one of the most important parts that we talked about, but I think ultimately it's that culture and the culture of boating and the culture of fun. Thanks for coming aboard, Morgan and Dakota. I really appreciated your input. Do you guys have any final statements?
Yeah, Pat, thanks for having us. It's been really fun doing a little podcast. I know you guys have been wanting to do it for a while, so it's cool to be a part of one right before I leave. But yeah, I think you're right. This was a really good conversation, and I guess what I've taken away from it is even the three millennials here, we all come with a different perspective, different point of view, different experience. So, I don't think the generation gap is as important as we think it is, or it has as much weight as sometimes we put on it. And I think just sort of human stuff like respect and communication, working together, is always going to prevail in a workplace environment, and bringing new people in. So I think just treat millennials like we're humans.
Yeah, again, thanks for having me here, guys. It was fun to talk to you. I definitely feel like everyone has their own input into a community, and I definitely feel like everyone has something good to add. It doesn't really matter what your generation is.
Morgan, Dakota, thanks for coming aboard and sitting with Pat and I and having this open conversation. I think that's really the start of having some longevity. Is you really have to have that communication. If there were any one thing that I'd boil this whole thing down to is, and where so many things are lost is in the translation, is really in that communication. And the companies, I think, that break through that barrier and have all generations within their company communicating, I guess, with the same language. I know we sit back sometimes and feel like we talk different languages, but we really don't. I think all in all, Dakota brought it up and I think said it best, is that when you have a group of people, no matter their age, no matter what their backgrounds are, if they're all pulling for a common goal, Pat brought that part in, that you really have to instill that culture. So if you have that culture and you have those common goals in place, you're going to be successful. And that's really what this adds up to. Doesn't matter if you're 21 or if you're 61. If you can speak the same language, you all have the same thing going for you. You want to have the best outcome, you're going to succeed. So, hey, Pat, I think that's good for today. And what's your take, buddy? You ready to take a break? It's time, by the way, I think, for him to get back to work. If the golf course were open, I'd probably be going to the golf course. But I'm going to hide in my office, and I think Pat's going to go back out and get the crew running. What do you think, pal?
That was a lot of fun. So thanks for listening, guys. Have a great holiday season.
Hey, thanks for listening in. It's Rob and
Patrick,
and it's the Clark Marine Boatcast. We hope you found this session enjoyable. Look for our next ones coming coming to an iPhone or a computer or wherever you listen to it, to you again very soon. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.